Uh-oh. Here. We're going to pause before we begin because our instructor is trying to fix the blinds.
Uh-oh.
This is kind of like going to the symphony and having to go tune up somebody's instrument
Oh,
when you're in the audience.
okay. Oh,
Oh golly, let's just say he falls, he breaks his leg. Ay, ay, ay. Are we insured? And you know, he's a stickler for having this place dark. I don't know whether you guys noticed, but it was either last week or the week before. Somebody dared either coming in late or leaving early. And it bothered him that that door was open. I didn't even notice it. Did you guys? Oh, well, okay, I guess it was my bad. Maybe I was asleep. Anyway, so what I want to say is good afternoon. This is a nice place to be on this rainy day, huh? I mean, it just feels warm. Actually, I was going to ask Jane if she could, light the fire, but it was warm enough when I got in here. And I'm going to say something, and this is my way of saying, please turn off your phones. I just read in a book I'm reading today this quote that the mother of this family said at dinner time, turn off your phones. Anyone I want to talk to is here. So I figured for the next 2 hours, any place I want to be is here. So hopefully that will be you too. On February 17th, February 17th, which is a Saturday, we have our French group coming for the Valentine sweets and treats and music. So once again, if you would like to come, it's $25 a ticket. And next Monday, Jane, is it next Monday that the stitching class begins? Or is it a week from? Okay, well, I'll tell you about it next week.
oh,
Meanwhile-
yeah, it's a week from, we have 1 week off between the
Good,
2 classes.
good to know. I won't dress up and come over. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to tell you that Christian has told me that we will have a break today. So we have a little bit more time to either ask him questions, ponder the beautiful art we see, and take a break. So with that, I look forward to today's lecture and today's lecturer.
Thank you, Charlene. You do a wonderful job presenting me. I really do appreciate. I love the rain. You guys like the rain? Isn't it fun? So thank you for coming to see my lecture. This one will be great, I promise you. What you're looking at is exactly what I'm not going to show you. This is a piece from the Rococo and the Baroque period, right? The Baroque period was a very tedious and contrived period of the 18th century. And it was followed by the even more awful and frivolous period of the Rococo period. And then it was followed by the neoclassical, which was very formal and Roman. So basically, I'm skipping the 18th century because it was a, you see this. I mean, it's beautifully painted, right? Very few people can paint this way. But the subject matter is corny and a bit, do you guys have a word for that? Boring would be one. It's romantic, but it's not really real. It's right. It's very ornamental.
Christian, I do have a question about this.
Yeah.
I've often wondered, how long are her legs?
That's really funny. Maybe we should lift her skirt to get a.
Well, but you can see her knee.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think. She was a long-legged woman.
Very long.
But it is a very contrived period. Nevertheless, this artist is very famous. His name is Jean-Honoré Fragonard. I don't know why I tend to say it in an English way. Might as well say it in French, right? His name is Jean-Honoré Fragonard, and this is called The Swing, and it's painted in 1767. It's an oil on canvas. So this presentation starts with the King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. They were king and queen of France before they died under the guillotine. And this lecture continues from the French Revolution with the arrival of Napoleon, who had himself sacred emperor. Then he was followed by another king, then he was followed by another member of Napoleon's family, then another king, until the advent of the First Republic. What you're looking at here is a painting by Antoine François Calais. It's a painting of Louis XVI before he had a head. I mean, while he had a head. It's an oil on canvas that is huge. It's made to impress. It measures almost 9 feet tall. So it's one thing to see it, but to imagine the size, the grandeur that you wish to give to the painting. So you see Louis XVI in his grand royal costume, and he was the last king of France before the French Revolution. Look at the shoes. He has a sword too, but I don't think he's ever used it. This is a very strange painting by a French painter called Jean-François Garneret. It's Louis XVI at the Temple prison while he's waiting for his fate to be decided. And this is a huge painting. It measures around 8 feet tall. Isn't that unusual? It tells a story, and it's just very minimal. It's a very unusual way to paint. It's a very unusual composition. So that's him at the temple. Here's a woman artist. Sadly, there's not many women artists in my lectures. This is an artist called Elisabeth Louise. Let me start again. Elisabeth Louise Vigée Lebrun Marie Antoinette. This is Marie Antoinette with a rose. So she was the queen of France. And this is an oil on canvas that was made in 1783, and it's still at the Palace of Versailles in Paris. And the lady Elisabeth Louise Vigée was born in 1755, and she painted around 700 paintings during her lifetime, but most of them in the Rococo style. So we're only going to show you one painting because it was Marie Antoinette. Well, this one, does this one need a story? It's Marie Antoinette on her way to the guillotine. It's an amazing painting by a French painter called François Flamand. It's Marie Antoinette on her way to the guillotine. It's an oil on canvas that measures 100 inches, so a huge painting. It is at the Museum of the French Revolution in Paris. So Marie Antoinette was the last queen of France before the French Revolution. She was born the Archduchess of Austria, and her father was the Emperor Francis I of the Holy Roman Empire. You've heard of the Holy Roman Empire? Voltaire said that it was not holy, it was not Roman, it was not much of an empire either. So, you know, she was hated by the French population because she was called the Austrian whore, because through history, Austria and the Habsburg Empire were the enemy of France. So her marrying the King of France did not render her very, very popular. So this is Francois Flamand. And this is a famous painting. This is the storming of the Bastille. You've heard of the Bastille, right? 14th of July is Bastille Day. So this is the storming of the Bastille. It's painted in the year of the storming in 1789. So the Bastille was a Paris fortress, and it was also a symbol of French monarchy. And it was attacked by French revolutionary, and the 14th of July commemorate this storming. But the reality, like most of things in history, it was not so glorious at all. You had thousands of revolutionaries that were armed that just massacred a small garrison of like 60 soldiers. So, you know, but it became the symbol because that prison was where people could be held with no reason, no paperwork. The king just wrote a letter and you went to prison. You didn't know for how long. So it was a symbol of abuse. So I'll start with a very famous French painter. All I'm going to show you today are paintings. Paintings by famous French painter of the 19th century. That is before painting became the Impressionist, you know, at the end of the 19th century. So this is still the classical period. This is Jacques-Louis David. He was born in Paris in 1748 from a wealthy family. His father was killed in a pistol duel in 1757. So he was a neoclassical French painter, a supporter of the French Revolution and of Napoleon. So this is the Oath of the Orati. It's a Roman story. It has to do with three brothers expressing their solidarity with Rome to their father. So this painting is 11 feet by 14 feet. So I don't know if you imagine the work involved in doing a painting that scale. No, it's something that certainly would require a few years. It's a monumental painting. So I'm going to stay with Jean-Louis David. This is not my favorite painting in terms of theme. It's kind of corny, but in terms of execution, it's incredible. This is called The Farewell of Telemachus and Eucharis. It's based on a 1699 French novel that was based loosely on characters from a Greek poem and the Odyssey attributed to Homer. But look at the quality of the painting. Look at how smooth, just, it's hard to imagine somebody painting this. The skin. This is the death of Marat. Marat was a very famous revolutionary. He was a journalist and he was a politician. He was very radical. He was a friend of Robespierre, if you've heard of him. And he was assassinated by a lady called Charlotte Corday in 1793 during the French Revolution. She was a supporter of the monarchy. She pretended to give him a letter, thus the letter in his hand, and he was assassinated. So this is a very famous French painting. It's at the Royal Museum in Belgium. It measures 65 inches wide. But I found another painting of the same event, painted 60 years later, and you will see it feels more like a série noire, you know, something you put on a murder mystery cover. This is Paul-Jacques Aimé Baudry's The Murder of Marat. It's an oil on canvas that measures 80 inches wide. But look at her dress. Look how difficult it would be to paint something like that. Same artist. This is Napoleon in his study at the Tuileries. It's an oil on canvas that is actually at the National Gallery of Art. It measures 80 inches. I have read quite a few books about Napoleon. Napoleon was an amazingly cultured man. He wrote stunning letters. He was very brilliant. And most diplomats of his era, from England, from Germany, were very impressed by Napoleon. He was a very educated man, very brilliant. So, of course, the French still love Napoleon. So that's him when he was fairly young and recently in power. This is, of course, a painting that is very flattering to Napoleon. This is Napoleon crossing the Alps. And this painting measures 9 feet. So imagine painting it's a monumental achievement, and the artist was commissioned. It's at the Château de Malmaison in Paris. It's an oil on canvas that measures 102 inches wide. That said, Napoleon did invade Italy, but he was at the head of his troops. So he was also a very courageous man. He fought with his troop. He was the first in line often. So that's Napoleon. He had just crossed the Alps to defeat the Austrians at the siege of Genoa in Italy. And this is a very famous painting. This painting is 20 feet by 32 feet. It's the coronation of Emperor Napoleon and Empress Josephine at Notre Dame de Paris. This is painted in 1805, and it is in the Louvre. And you can see, there's a lot, every person that you see is well known and accurately painted. One thing that you see is that the Pope is sitting behind Napoleon, but Napoleon is placing the crown on Josephine himself, which is he's saying to the Pope, we don't need you. But through history, it was important to a lot of kings or emperors that wanted to be king or emperor to have the Pope present. So they would bribe them, they would do all kinds of things, But it looked good if the Pope was there. The next artist is François Gérard, and this is another painting of Louis this is Louis XVIII. Louis XVIII followed Napoleon. So after the fall of Napoleon, this very obese man brought back the old regime aristocracy. This is him in his coronation robe. It's painted in 1814, and the artist was a prominent French painter who was born in Rome, where his father was ambassador. And he studied under Jacques-Louis David, the same artist we just saw a few seconds ago. And Louis XVIII was sadly King of France from 1814 to 1824. This is François Gérard, again, same artist. This is a portrait of Juliette Récamier. It's an oil on canvas, again, that measures 9 feet. So very large, impressive painting. Madame Juliette Récamier, the lady right there, was a socialite, very famous for her beauty, and she had a literary salon that drew people from all literary and political circles in the early 19th century. So she was a famous figure and a beautiful woman, and many people painted her. And the last painting of the same artist is this one. So again, this is not my favorite painting in terms of style. This is definitely a Baroque Rococo painting, and but it is amazingly done. If you can go beyond, what is shown, the ability to paint things like that is just incredible. It's something you do after many, many years of training. So this is really cute. This one won't be cute. This is called the Raft of the Medusa. In the early 19th century, there was a shipwreck, and hundreds of French sailors died. And they died because they were abandoned by the aristocrat captain of the ship. So it made a big scandal, So this painting is extremely famous, and it's by an artist that painted very little because he died very young. So this is Theodore Géricault, The Raft of the Medusa. And it is known that he visited hospitals and morgues where he could view firsthand the color and the texture and the flesh of the people that were dead. So it created a great scandal, and it was highly controversial at his first appearance at the Paris Salon. This artist died at 33 years old. So, you know, all of us have lived, quite a long life, but if you had painted that by 33 years old, that's something, right? And I have one more painting of his. This is, again, an adulation image. This is a charging officer to the Napoleon Imperial Guard. So these were the soldiers, the officers that defended Napoleon, if you will, the bodyguard. But it is an extraordinary painting, and you can see there's a leopard skin on the seat. You tell me if you want me to skip the image longer, right? Some of you do, some don't, but I cannot know. So tell me if you want me to keep the image a little longer. I'm going to show you my favorite painter, French painter of the classical period. His name is Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres. Ever heard of Ingres? I-N-G-R-E-S? Ingres is incredible. So I'm going to show you the great thing about the 19th century is now you're starting to see photographs of people, right, that didn't exist before. So this is Dominique Ingres. This is a photograph of him when he was 75 years old. He was born in 1780 in the town of Montauban in France, and he was a neoclassical painter who studied under David, whom we saw earlier, and he's best remembered for his very smooth and magnificent portraits. So I'm going to show you his work. We'll start with the more common. This is Napoleon on his imperial throne. He was obviously commissioned. So Napoleon here is shown here as almost a divine ruler. You know, the painting measures 10 feet by 64 inches wide, and it is at the Museum of the Army in Paris. If you ever go to Paris, go to the Museum of the Army. You would be blown away. It may not be something you have been. It may not be something you think about, right? The army, soldiers and so forth. But the art that is associated with armors and weapons is just bewildering. Yeah? No, Museum of the Army. Is it in the, I don't know if it's part of the Invalides or not. You may be right. I don't recall. I went there maybe 10 years ago. I don't remember where it was. But it is an unusual museum that you'd find absolutely extraordinary.
Might I suggest you repeat the question so that the people watching the recording will know what's being asked and answered? Christian?
The question is, was the Museum of the Army part of the Invalid? Am I right? Right. And my answer is I don't know. So that was worth repeating, right? I don't know. I think you're probably right, would be my guess. This is Ingres. This is an extraordinary portrait of a gentleman called Monsieur Bertin. He was a journalist, an editor, and an art collector. It is at the Louvre Museum. Is that, to me, this is mind-blowing, to be able to render an expression with such contrast and character. The skin color, the realism, the hair, the look, it's vibrant. It's very realistic and just beautifully painted. But I got even better work by Ingres. This is a very famous painting by Ingres. This is the Great Bather, like a woman taking a bath. It's an oil on canvas that is at the Louvre Museum. You guys know who Charles Baudelaire is? Baudelaire is a French poet that wrote The Flowers of Evil. He wrote that this painting had a deep voluptuousness. Does it not? Is that a stunning painting? It's very minimalist, and yet it's so powerful. The ability to paint skin tone and the duvet and everything. It's just and when you see them in person, it's absolutely shocking to see how smooth it is. You cannot see brush stroke. It's just ultra smooth. This is one of his most famous paintings. And I've seen this one in the Louvre, and that one just is bewildering. This is called La Grande Odalisque. The Odalisque is depicting a young Turkish concubine, and it was painted in Italy for the sister of Napoleon, who was also Queen of Naples. That's what happened when you have a good family. She became Queen of Naples, and you see the hashish pipe on the ground to her, near her feet. I have seen this painting, and the photograph cannot render the beauty of the curtains. Anybody has seen this painting in person? Am I right? Did you feel that way when you saw it? Isn't it? This is a painting that Ingres did. This is a portrait of the Baroness James de Rothschild. So wealthy family. But you had to be wealthy to afford a commission of his painting. So this is the Baroness James de Rothschild. Her name was Betty von Rothschild. She married her uncle in 1824, and she ruled over the most elegant salon in Paris. Look at her dress. It's also moving if you think that at one point this woman was alive. She had a life like we all do, right? And this is the only thing we have left of her to remember her by. I'll show you a few of his beautiful woman painting. This is a painting of Louise de Broglie. She was the Countess d'Aussonville. It's an oil on canvas that is at the Frick Collection in New York. It measures 52 inches tall. And I know for a fact that this painting took Ingres 3 years to complete. And because I'm an artist, I also work with oil, I understand that it would take you 3 years to do such a painting. Isn't the color of her dress absolutely beautiful? Look at the number of folds, how complex it is. And there's just a little bit of red to contrast with the violet. And this one is Madame Moitessier. She was the wife of a wealthy banker and merchant who was 20 years older than her. This is an oil on canvas that is at the National Gallery in London. It measures 47 inches. And again, you can see the beautiful work on the dress. And he did another painting of the same woman that I found very, very beautiful. Sorry, this is the same piece but framed. This is the other painting he did of her. What do you guys think? I can tell you that if you were to take black and you would paint her dress, right, it would just look like a big black blob, right? To be able to convey transparency, to make the black dimensional is incredible. It's a really gorgeous painting. So we'll, oh no, I have another one of his, and that's the last of this artist. This is a portrait, check her name. Her name was Joséphine Éléonore Marie Pauline de Galard de Brassac de Béarn. That's what vanity does for you. And she was the Princess Albert de Broglie. It's an oil on canvas measuring 48 inches tall. Her husband was a very well-known historian and politician who became prime minister during the France Third Republic. She was known to be shy. She was known to be beautiful and intelligent. She died of tuberculosis at the age of 35 years old. So it makes such a painting more special. You know? She was beautiful. She lived and she died. again, the color of her dress and the way the light is rendered is incredible. The details. Look at the couch, that golden couch. So we'll move on to a very different artist called Paul Delaroche. This is Joan of Arc being interrogated by the Cardinal of Winchester in her prison, so just before her death. This is painted in 1824. It's an oil on canvas that is at the Musée des Beaux-Arts in Rouen. Rouen was the town in Normandy where she was burned to the stakes. And so this artist was born in Paris in 1797, just a few years after the French Revolution, and he achieved great success because of his, you can tell, very melodramatic, classical, and romantic painting. So, I had a British girlfriend, and history book in England said that the French burned Joan of Arc, which is silly because we know it's the British, right? So every country has very different history books. So this is her being interrogated by the Cardinal of Winchester. This is the death of Elizabeth I of England. She died in 1603, and she was the last Tudor monarch. It's very dramatic, but incredibly painted. So this is Elizabeth I. I'll show you a terrible painting, not by him, of Elizabeth I. Check this one out. You see how naively painted the face is? But the clothing is simply outrageous. The work is a work of many years, and you could magnify this piece forever and see absolutely incredible detail. So Paul Delaroche also painted this one. This is, let me make sure I have the right size. This is the execution of Lady Jane Grey. Ever heard of her? Anybody? It's painted in 1893. It is at the National Washington Gallery. Jane Grey was a pretender to the throne of England in 1553, and she was executed with her husband under the rule of Queen Mary. It's a pretty impressive painting, isn't it? You can see how gentle everybody is, even the how do you call it? Not the hangman, but the executioner, even him seems very moved to have to cut such a beautiful neck. But he does. This one I'm going to skip because that was a mistake. So this is Napoleon. He's not doing too good. This is him at Fontainebleau, which is one of the castles outside of Paris. It's painted in the moment is captured, it was 1814. So he's in a small apartment room in the Palace of Fontainebleau. He's slumped in a chair, he's alone. You can see the disappointment and the anger on his face. His downfall is looming. The destruction of his empire has been decided, and monarchy will soon be restored. But isn't that an amazing way to convey that? The painting tells a story. You don't need the words. He's not having a good day. And, he also painted this. This is an unusual painting. This is Peter the Great of Russia. Peter the Great of Russia was the emperor, the Tsar, from 1682 to 1725. He was an absolute monarch. I actually visited his summer palace in St. Petersburg. But on a more intimate level, he painted this. This is a painting of his wife on her deathbed. Her name was Louise Vernet. Is it not an extraordinary painting? Isn't that moving? Isn't it moving that you would love someone and you would paint them this way as they're dying? Look how the hair are done. Spectacular. Now to an artist that is very different and very popular in France for good reason. This is Jean-François Millet. He was born in a village in Normandy in 1814, and he's well known for his painting of peasants and farmers. This painting, this photograph by a French photographer named Nadar, is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So this is one of his paintings. This is called the Angelus. The Angelus is a prayer that was said at dawn or at sunset. And this is at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. It's painted in 1857. So it's painted 100, you do the math. This painting is one of his most famous. This is called The Gleaners. The gleaners were working class women that were very poor. And after the harvest, they were allowed to go into the field at sunset to pick up whatever ears of corn had been left. So it's true to one of Millet's favorite subjects, peasant life. And this painting is the culmination of many, many years of research. Is it not beautiful? It's moving. It's also moving that he would choose to paint such subject. Because when you painted such subject, you were heavily criticized because this was seen as dirty. Poor people, you know, it was not very fashionable to do that. So this is called The Gleaners, but my favorite painting of his is this one. It's called Death and the Woodcutter. It's painted in 1858. It's also at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. It tells a beautiful story, doesn't it? So then we'll go to a different painter that produced very little because he died very young. This is a great painter. This is Gustave Courbet. He was a French painter who was part of the realist movement, and he only painted what he could see, and he rejected academic convention. So this is the painter studio. It measures 20 feet wide by 12 feet, and it's at the Musée d'Orsay. And the other painting of his I'm going to show you is this one. This is a burial at Ornans. Ornans is a little town somewhere. This painting measures 22 feet by 10 feet, so great painting, and it's highly unusual because what the painting shows is the funeral in September 1848 of his great uncle. So no big deal, nobody famous, just his great uncle in a small town. That's his burial. But he treated this, you know, this provincial funeral on a giant scale, which is traditionally reserved for a great event in history. And it's done with, you know, very realistically. And when it was shown at the 1850 Paris Salon, it created really an explosive reaction. You know, he had a lot of detractors, but he also brought him fame. Isn't that an unusual painting? The colors, the dark. It's, you know, again, this painting measures 22 feet, so you're talking years of work, right? So as an artist, you have to go into your mindset. How do you paint for years something so sad, so dark, right? That's a pretty extraordinary commitment. This is a totally Rococo Baroque period. I show it to you because it's well done. I don't like it, but it's very well done. It's The Birth of Venus. And the artist is Alexandre Cabanel. He was born in 1823, and he painted historical and classical subject, but in a very academic style. He did do this very beautiful painting. This is called Albédée. And the painting is inspired by a poem by Victor Hugo. You've heard of him. He wrote Les Miserables. And the poetry book he wrote was Fragment of a Serpent. That's his painting, and it is just beautiful. Her eyes looks at you. Isn't it mystical of a painting? Of course, if you were a great artist and you wanted to be honored, you had to paint. This is Napoleon III. This is after Napoleon's downfall, after the king that followed him. This is Napoleon III. His uncle was Napoleon. He was actually a very popular ruler. He gave workers the right to strike. He allowed women to attend university. So he was popular and people liked him. This painting is at the Castle of Compiègne. I went to school there. This is an oil and canvas that measures 91 inches wide. Same artist. This is Cleopatra tasting poisons on condemned prisoners. So she's on a reclining sofa and she's observing the effect of poisons of people that have been condemned to death. She looks very blasé, doesn't she? Isn't that a wild painting? It really is beautiful. Beautiful contrast. This one is called Pandora. It depicts, the painting is about a very famous singer. She was a Swedish soprano, Christine Nilsson, as Pandora. Pandora in Greek mythology had opened a forbidden box and it had released all the trouble that affected humanity. So he painted this very famous opera singer named Christine Nilsson. And I found a photograph of her by Nadar. Nadar is a well-known photographer, one of the first photographers. This is her. Isn't she beautiful? Whoop. This is an artist called Jean-Léon Gérôme. He was a painter and a sculptor. He was born in the town of Vesoul, in 1824, and he's considered one of the most important painters from this academic period. This painting shows recreation in a Russian camp, and it depicts a moment of respite for Russian soldiers as they enjoy the playing of music. The slave market, because then there was a big fad, it was the fashion to portray Orientalism or Arab countries or the Asian country. So this is the slave market. Of course, we know it's not really about slave. They want to show a very pretty woman. It's an oil and canvas that measures 33 inches. He's checking her teeth. But check this one out. This is called Phryne before Aeropagus. So he depicts Pharynx. Pharynx is a lady that is naked. She was a famous woman. She's being disrobed in front of the Greek court. And she was on trial for impiety, but was acquitted when her defender removed her robe to expose her beauty. You can see all the guys, they're saying, not guilty, not guilty, everybody, right? It did not take them long to rule her out, doesn't it? But look how every face is carefully painted with a different expression. So I'd say this is a pretty biased jury. And this one repeats a very famous theme. Those who are about to die salute you. That is what gladiators would say to the emperor before fighting in the Roman circus. This is called Pygmalion and Galatea. The Roman poet Ovid, in a book called Metamorphoses, he relates that Pygmalion was a sculptor, and he made a sculpture in an ivory statue that represented his ideal woman. But he fell in love with his own creation, which he named Galatea, the goddess. But the goddess Venus brought the statue to life, to answer his prayers. There were many painters painted this, but no one with this elegance. So you see this is called Pygmalion and Galatea. I'm going to show you the same version in the Middle Ages. Not as exciting, is it? This is the Roman de Rose, the novel of the Rose, 14th century illumination on parchment. So it's just not as exciting. I found this landscape painted from him that literally blew me away. Isn't that beautiful? There's just something about it, like you want to be there, or you've been there before. Yeah. This is called Summer Afternoon on a Lake. It's an oil on canvas. It was painted in 1895. And the last painting of this artist is this one. It's a duel after a masquerade. It's an oil on canvas, and it depicts a man dressed as, I don't know, you would translate Pierrot, but kind of a mime type of clown, right? Is that how you would translate it? He has been mortally wounded in a sword duel. It's quite striking, is it not? Let me see. So before we take a little break, I'm going to show you one more artist. His name is William Adolphe Bouguereau. So he's kind of Rococo, but he does beautiful work. This is the Day of the Dead. The Day of the Dead in France is, well, that's what you call, same for the Mexican, right? What's the name? Yeah. So when I was a child, I would go, your entire family goes to the cemetery and you bring flowers to your deceased ancestors. The flowers of choice was chrysanthemum. So to me, chrysanthemum has never felt like a very happy flowers. Those are the flowers you bought and put them on tombs. So again, you know, if I gave you a black tube of paint and a brush, it would look like a black blob, right? To be able to render the subtlety of this is remarkable. So this is William Adolphe Bouguereau. He was a French academic painter. He was born in the town of La Rochelle. And this is Nymph and Satire. So again, this is very much Rococo painting, not my style at all, but in terms of quality of painting, it is remarkable. You know, the mastery of the human body. And he painted his wife, that I found very moving, because the painting feels so personal and so intimate. This is a painting of his wife. Her name was Elizabeth Gardner, and it's in a private collection, and there's something really intriguing about her. You can feel he loved her. So if it's okay with you, we're gonna take a break. If you have questions for me, we can talk, and you can have water or what else is being served. Yeah. So let's take a little break. I'm gonna turn my microphone, right, Jen? Moment of beauty, and you see people that died a long time ago. It's all you have of them, you know? So I think it's special that we only likely only see this painting once, you know? That's why I don't want to give you an analysis. I don't like people that give you intellectual analysis of painting. Like, it's boring. Let me feel, because mostly it's feeling, right? There's an emotional response to painting. You're not like it's like if you look at a painting of Norman Rockwell, right? Did I mention that before? Norman Rockwell is an incredible artist, right? Technically, he doesn't get any better. But if you put a Van Gogh and a Norman Rockwell, one is just going to make you, it's powerful. It's more what you eat, the emotion.
We were talking in the break, Gal and myself, and we were talking about how much we appreciate the history that many of these paintings tell.
Oh, yeah?
So it's maybe not a lesson, maybe you don't give a lesson in art or the construction of the painting, but you are giving a context.
Yes.
And I think one of the values of Norman Rockwell, just bringing it back to that, is the fact that what he paints is kind of representational of the US scene, the times.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what I do is I show you beautiful images or unusual images, I try, and I just give you a thin layer of history, So it's art with a little bit of history. Can we turn off the lights? Including these. She's trying. She knows about these lights. Yeah. Thank you, Jane. Where were we? Okay. He's a great artist. This is early 19th century. And you're going to see that his work looks very surreal. This is a very unusual artist called Gustave Moreau. He was born in Paris in 1826, and he was an important figure of the symbolist movement. So he painted a lot of allegories and traditional biblical and mythical subjects, but he did it in a very unique way. This is called Jason and Medea. It's an oil on canvas, 80 inches tall. It is at the Musée d'Orsay. And Jason and Medea in Greek mythology, Medea figures in the myth of Jason and the Argonauts. But you see how unusually painted it is. This is his painting of Jupiter and Semele. This is 1894. And it's 84 inches. Incredibly detailed, very, very surreal. My favorite painting of his is this one. This is called Autumn. It's an oil panel that is at the Getty Center, and it's called Deianira. Deianira was a princess in Greek mythology. That painting really touched me. There's just, how to describe it, there's just an elegance and a flow, and the colors are just, I absolutely love this painting. Yes, his name is, let me find it again. No, it's just Gustave Moreau, M-O-R-E-A-U. Very unusual painter for his era. So this is called Deianira. And this one, I mean, look at the style. You see how different this is? It's very mystical. It's absolutely beautiful painted. This is Salome dancing before Herod. It's an oil on canvas. It's painted in 1876. And it is a gospel story of her dance at the birthday celebration of her stepfather. Her stepfather had John the Baptist beheaded at her request. And that story inspired art, literature, and music. You see the depth of this painting? It's so fluid. So we'll go to a very different painting, but there's no other way. He's just absolutely unique. And his work reminds me of surrealism. This is Auguste Toulmouche. My grandmother's name was Augustine. Hey, Jane, the picture is not moving. Jane, one. It happened, it freezes. There we go. Thank you, Jane. Whoa. Okay. This painter is Auguste Tulmouche. Auguste Tulmouche, this is a portrait of a lady called Rose Caron. It measures 46 inches. It's at the Musée Carnavalet in Paris. The painter was born in Brittany, and he was known for his luxurious painting of upper middle class Parisian women in domestic scene. The woman you're looking at is Rose Caron. She was a famous French opera singer, and she was born in 1857. I found a photograph of her. So this is cool, you know, like it's really cool to see the early photographs of people you never thought had been photographed. You know, they actually were captured. So this is this beautiful woman, Rose Caron. This is his painting, Auguste Tulmouche. So you can see they're very popular painting, you know, but they are beautifully executed. This is called Vanity, and it measures 29 inches by 19 inches. And this is called the love letter. You know, I know the painting is, you know, it's rather stilted and a bit corny, but look at the dress. Look how incredibly painted the light and shading is. It's a very, it would be a very complex endeavor to paint such a dress. You would think, where do I start? You know, it would take a lot of strategy, but the colors are just mesmerizing. The reflections on the dress. And the last painting of his, because we can only take so much of his work, but this is The Kiss. The Kiss is a remarkable painting. The composition of The Kiss is incredible. Absolutely, the composition, the movement, you know, you cannot see his face, and yet you feel the moment, how happy she is to see him. Look at his suit, the clothing. And if I may, look at the whatever light fixture is to the corner. Look how well done that is. You know, to paint that little light fixture would require many, many days just to do that one. So one of the great painters of the 19th century, and certainly one of my favorite, is Manet. Not Monet, but Manet, because I prefer Manet to Monet. And so this is Manet. This is a photograph of him taken again by this early photographer called Nadar, a picture of Manet. He was born in Paris in 1832, and he was one of the first 19th century artists to paint modern life. You know, it was kind of a transition from realism to impressionism. This is Manet, Music in the Tuileries Garden. And this painting includes In the painting, Baudelaire, who wrote The Flowers of Evil and Manet, are in the painting. I could not be exactly sure where. But you can see a very different approach, you know. And as I progress in my lectures, you may see the progression and the styles evolving. It's becoming from classical to a little less classical until you get to the Impressionist, until you get to people like me. You do whatever you want, right? So you slowly get there. So this is Music in the Tuileries Garden. It's painted in 1862. Now, one of the paintings that was a shocker, shocked everybody in the world and the Parisian world especially, is this one, Lunch on the Grass by Edouard Manet. It measures 9 feet wide. It's a very large painting. It is at the Musée d'Orsay. It depicts a nude female and a barely dressed woman in a picnic with two full-dressed men in a rural setting. So it was rejected by the Salon jury of 1863, but you can see why such a painting would spark public notoriety and scandal, because to people at the time, this was a prostitute. Women just did not do that, you know, get undressed with two men in the garden. So this painted, you know, it was heavily criticized, but it was also heavily admired. That's Lunch on the Grass, and it's a very daring painting of 1863. So you see that woman? I think the woman here, the same model, is the same woman. This painting also creating an uproar because you see a woman that is thought or known as a prostitute. You have a black woman. You can see how the woman is staring at the camera as she has no shame. You know, she's like, look at me. So that painting created shock and astonishment when the painting was first exhibited. But it is powerful, isn't it? Manet. This is a bar in the Folies Bergère in Paris. It's an oil on canvas that is at the Courtauld Institute of Art in London. And it depicts a night scene in a nightclub called the Folies Bergère in Paris. To me, his painting, there's a lot of emotion in his painting, the way he renders human emotion. This is his painting called The Balcony, and it shows 4 different figures on the back balcony. The woman that is sitting in the foreground is Berthe Morisot. Have you ever heard of Berthe Morisot? Berthe Morisot was one of the few Impressionist women. She became very famous on her own, and she married the brother of Manet. This is called In the Conservatory. It's an oil on canvas that is 60 inches wide, and you just can see the mastery of his work. You know, it's not painstakingly painted or smooth, but there is great force in his painting. Young Lady with a Parrot by Manet. And that's the same woman, the same model that you saw earlier. Isn't that pretty? Let me see if I have the size. I do, 73 inches tall. Very impressive painting. Another different artist, of course, most artists that I show you are very different than the one that preceded it. This is Henri Fanton Latour. He was born in Grenoble. He was a friend of Whistler. You guys know who Whistler is? He painted The Artist's Mother, and he was a friend of Manet. And this is a workshop in Batignolles. Batignolles is a suburb in Paris. It's an oil on canvas that measures 11 feet. And Manet is the one painting. Renoir, you guys have heard of Renoir, right? He's the one standing to the right of your screen. So it's just a bunch of different artists in the studio. This one is called A Corner of a Table, and it shows, I don't know if many of you are familiar with French poetry, but the gentleman to the left is Verlaine. Verlaine, ever heard of Verlaine? And the one next to him is Rimbaud. So, you know, you can see the style, how different it is compared to all the other paintings I've shown you. You can see how each painting is radically different than in the approach, the way it's painted. I have a great photograph for you. This is Verlaine, Paul Verlaine, the famous French poet, drinking absinthe. You guys know what absinthe is? Isn't that an amazing photograph? It's not just a photograph, it's a mood. You can see that, you can feel that such great artists struggled. You know, I imagine it was a solitary life. We know them, see, we know all these people, they're famous. You know, in retrospect, they're well known, they're famous. But they weren't before when they did their work, you know, they struggled. So this is Verlaine, and I found this picture very, very touching. This is a painting of the sister of his wife. It's very unique because it looks like a pastel, but it isn't. It's an oil painting. Did it show on the screen? And this is a painting of Mr. and Mrs. Edwards. Isn't she beautiful, that woman? Did you guys see the movie Killers of the Flower Moon that just came out? Doesn't she remind you of her, of that Indian woman? She said very little, and yet her look was magnetic, you know? Isn't she beautifully painted? It takes a lot of talent with a few brushstrokes to render an expression like that, when most people, including me, would mess it up. It's incredible. So let's go to Edgar Degas. All of you have heard of Degas? You know, he painted ballet dancer and things like that. He was born in Paris in 1834, and he was the start of the Impressionist movement, and he's very famous for his pastel drawing and his oil painting. This is a ballet class. It's at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, and it measures 33 inches wide. He had a talent, an ability to portray dancers. This is a ballet rehearsal on stage, an oil on canvas, also at the Musée d'Orsay. This is called the dance class. It's painted in 1874. It's a very unique subject. Absolutely beautifully painted. And you can see how the brush strokes of painter become looser. You know, it's not as refined or polished. People paint faster, you know, with more emotion. It's looser. This is by Degas. This is a little sculpture. I don't know what part he played in doing it. I don't really know. But this is a 14 years old dancer by Degas. Look at this. This is called the Opera Orchestra. Look at the composition. You know, what artist would think of cutting the head of the dancers, right? The composition is incredible. It's powerful. Imagine how many sketches he had to do to get to this level of quality. And this is a great painting by Degas that I found beautiful. This is called the Bellelli family. It's a painting of his aunt, her husband, and their two young daughters. And it measures 8 feet wide. It's at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. It's very sober, very beautifully painted with a lot of feelings. You see that young little girl to the left? Doesn't it look like a photograph? Or look, it appears that she's looking at you and she's alive. That takes a lot of talent. And a very unusual painting by Manet is this one. This is called a cotton office in New Orleans. It's an oil and canvas, and it depicts the interior. His maternal uncle owned a cotton firm. I'm not saying he owned slaves, but that's very possible. And he created the painting Manet while he visited New Orleans with his family. It's a great interpretation of a cotton office. Again, these are masterpieces. You know, the undertaking is huge. I don't know how much time you would take to paint this, but a long, long time. This one is at the Pau Museum of Art. So Pau is a town in the south of France. So PAU. One of my favorite painting is the following. This is called The Rape by Degas. I like people that have something to say, you know. This is quite a social commentary. You can see how aloof the man is after the rape. You can feel the emotions. He tells a story, and it takes a lot of bravery for a painter to approach such a subject. Because in these days, 19th century, very few women would say they've been raped because it was not something people were interested or even condemned. So it took a lot of courage for him to paint. It's a powerful painting, isn't it? And this is my favorite painting by Manet. This is called The Absinthe, you know, the famous drink. Absinthe, if you don't know, it's an anise-flavored liquor, and it's derived from several plants, and the liquor often is portrayed as dangerous and having hallucinogenic effect. So this is L'Absinthe. It portrays a woman and a man, you know, they're sitting side to side. They appear lethargic or lonely. The woman is dressed more formally, but she's just, you know, staring vacantly at the ground. It kind of reminds me of the pictures I just showed you of who was drinking absinthe in my previous photograph. Does it remind you of that photograph? So this is L'Absinthe by Degas. A happier painter, his name is Jacques Tissot. This is the circle of the Rue Royale. It's a it's a group of people that they were part of the same circle on the Royal Street in Paris. So the members of the circle of this gentleman club, you know, the club had been founded in 1852. Each of the 12 men that are portrayed paid 1,000 French francs of the time to be included in the painting. So these were wealthy people. The artist was born in Brittany, southern Brittany, and he was a very famous painter and illustrator, and he moved to London in the middle of the 19th century. And his work became very, very popular. It's very realistic. This is the Thames River in London by Jacques Tissot. Again, that painting created an uproar in Victorian England, because the artwork was seen as dirty and morally wrong, because it shows, plume of smoke, it shows the filthy river, and especially it shows women of ill repute, because women did not do that. They did not just hang out with guys on a boat. That was pretty close to being a sex worker to that era. So that to us, that painting looks, very average, but to the Victorian world, it was very, very shocking. You guys like pugs? Anybody's got a pug? Who has a pug here? I bet one of you has a pug. No? Are you pugless? This is a young lady with a boat. Isn't that beautifully painted? It's absolutely gorgeous. It measures 26 inches wide, so not that big, and it is in a private collection. It's an oil on canvas. Now I have two more paintings of his. Here's another painting that created quite an uproar, but to you it'd be like, why? It's called The Captain's Daughter. You see the sailor, the way he's looking at the woman? That was considered salacious, That's not something you painted. You can see he's looking at her in a way that is not platonic, right? So that painting was very shocking to people of the day. So that painting was heavily criticized. Another reason the painting was criticized is because the artist was French, and the French people was considered morally suspect to start with, So it did not go very well. The last painting of this artist is this one. It's called The Ball. It's an oil on canvas that is at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. An incredible different artist is Honoré Daumier. He was a sculptor, a painter, and a printmaker, and he did a lot of incredible caricatures for which he was jailed many times. This is the Third Class Carriage, painted in 1862. It reminds me of the Potato Eaters of Van Gogh, doesn't it? Daumier has a very distinct style. He's not afraid. This is The Chess Player by Daumier. And this one is a watercolor and an ink drawing called The Lawyers. Anybody's a lawyer here? This is called The Jurist or The Lawyer. This is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Very famous drawing. So I told you he did a lot of caricatures for which he was imprisoned. So he did this caricature called The Pair of the French King Louis Philippe, who was King of France in 1830. This caused him to go to jail. It's called The Pear, like the fruit. So he obviously mocked the authority. So this was sold for 6,000 French francs to pay for the fine that was given to the newspaper for publishing this. Isn't that fun? So that's Honoré Daumier. François Flamand. This is a reception at Malmaison. Malmaison was a French castle outside of Paris, and it was the last residence of Napoleon. And you can see Napoleon playing with a young woman running in the foreground. You guys see that? Right? So it's really a really cool painting. The painter is, as I said, François Flamand. He was a French painter of the 19th century, and he's actually the artist that designed the first banknotes. You know, one thing I did not like about the creation of the euro is we had beautiful currency. Every country had different currency. And now they're just they look like dollars. They're kind of boring, you know? So this is Napoleon at the castle of Malmaison. And this one is the bathing of court ladies in the 18th century. This is at the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. And it's 45 inches wide. Isn't that beautiful? The combination of landscape and figures. It is fairly neoclassical. And this is extraordinary painting of an elderly woman called Adeline Noble, like a noble. Is that an impressive painting? That's an incredible painting. And this is at the Smithsonian Museum. It's so elegant. So this is a portrait of a famous woman. Her name was Princess Zinaida Yusupova. She was a Russian noblewoman. This is at the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. So the artist is François Flamand, but this woman is the Princess Zinaida Yusupova. I found a photograph of her. She's beautiful. This is also at the Hermitage Museum. She was a Russian noblewoman. She was the only heiress of a very large fortune of the time. She was famed for her beauty. She was the mother of Prince Felix Yusupov. He's the man that murdered Rasputin. But I'm going to show you a painting of her that has nothing to do with French because it's Russian. But it is the same woman, Princess Zinaida Yusupova. It's painted by Valentin Serov, Russian artist. Check this out. It doesn't get any better than that. Is that gorgeous? A very unusual and very realistic, and it's a good portrait of the times. This is an artist called Pascal Dagnan Bouveret. And it shows a wedding in a photographer's studio. You see how realistic this is? It looked like a photograph of a photograph. It just is. I don't know how you can paint something like that. You know, it looks simple, but every piece of that painting is complex and requires mastery. This artist was born in 1852. He studied under two artists that we saw earlier. He went to the École of the Beaux-Arts in Paris, where I went, but I was kicked out after a few months. So I can't put that on my resume, but this is Wedding in a Photographer's Studio. And this one is really amazing. This is called An Accident. It's a young boy that just cut his hand. Look at the light, the light and dark inside the room. And he did this painting. This is called Gustave Courtois. Is a painter called Gustave. He painted his friend, and this is called Gustave Courtois in his studio. And I found this painting absolutely remarkable because it appears that the woman dressed in black, it's out of focus, as if she was moving when she was being painted. I love the natural position of those two people. A different artist, again, this is Henri Gervex. I only have two or three pictures of his, but it shows wealthy life in different Paris restaurants or clubs. This one is an evening at the Armenonville Pavilion in Paris. It's an oil on canvas, and the artist Henri Gervex was a French painter. He was born in 1852. And he also painted this one. This is an evening at the Pré Catalan. The Pré Catalan is a very expensive restaurant in Paris. The painting is at the Musée Carnavalet. And this restaurant is in the 16th arrondissement in Paris. Isn't the light amazing? The light is really amazing. And the last painting of this artist, Henri Gervex, is this one. This is called Return from the Ball. It looked like he told her he was done giving her money. That was it. There's movement in this painting. It's not stilted. Now let me show you a great, great French artist. Have you heard of Gustave Caillebotte? Caillebotte? It's just the way I pronounce it that sounds funny. I'm just going to show you his painting because you'll know. Caillebotte is Caillebott. But I will show you a painting that you will have seen. Not this one, but soon. This is Caillebotte. This is a young man at his window. It's at the Paul Getty Museum. Gustave Caillebotte was born in Paris in 1848, and he died at 46 years old. And he was an early painter of the Impressionist movement, although he painted, in a more realistic manner than most of them. This is his painting of his mother, his aunt, his cousin, and a family friend. It's called Portrait in the Countryside. And it reminds me of the women I've known, being a child, people that were needing. It's such a soft painting. Roofed up in the snow. This painting, it really feels like Paris. I had a kind of a made bedroom under a rooftop when I was in my 20s in Paris, and I ate pasta with that butter. Anyway, that's the type of life you live under the rooftop. Isn't that beautiful painting? Yeah? So I'm going to show you the painting that you know. I bet all of you will recognize this painting. This is called The Floor Scrapers. It's an oil on canvas at the Musée d'Orsay, and I actually saw it at the Art Institute of Chicago, and it is extraordinary. So you see the evolution of painting. They're starting to show regular people. Where's the pointer? Let me get that pointer out. Whoop. They're starting to show regular people. And this is a painting by Caillebotte. He died young, so he only produced this much. You may have seen this painting. This is called Paris Street in the Rain. It's at the Art Institute of Chicago. And the perspective is incredible. It measures 9 feet wide. So this is quite an undertaking. This is splendidly painted. And I'll show you a small painting that I really like that he did. This is a painting of Nasturtium. Say that for me. Thank you. Isn't that pretty? And I will leave you with one more artist. His name is Jean-Bastien Lepage. He was born in 1848 in eastern France. This is called Love in a Village. It's beautiful because there's a certain prudity. Do you say prudity in English? It's prude. It shows very little. And yet you can feel that there's love between the two of them. It's not said or demonstrated, but you can see the shyness of those two people. He also painted this. This is my last painting of his. This is Joan of Arc, the medieval teenager who became a French patriotic symbol. And she was born in the same area that the artist was born. So he painted her. That's for my last painting. There, there, and that's the end of this lecture. Isn't that amazing? I mean, incredible. You know, I have done a lot of different lectures from Roman art to German art to wherever. It's incredible the amount of beautiful art there is, the amount of beautiful poetry, beautiful music, you know. So I would like to hear, do you guys have, first of all, do you guys have questions you'd like to ask me? Go ahead. Do you have a microphone, Jane, or?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the paintings. Ask a question?
I have a question about the history or background of some of these paintings, the portraits and the landscapes and the paintings of everyday scenes are understandable, but some of the murders, executions, those kind of paintings, and some of them are huge. Would those be commissioned, or would the artist just want to paint such a scene, and where would they go at that time?
It's a good question. I don't have answers. I mean, you can tell that when when Degas painted the rape, that's not a commission painting, right? He painted because he felt he wanted to express that. Other painting, like the one that are more studio painting, like Joan of Arc, you know, it could be commissioned. I don't know the history of each painting, but those paintings that you refer to are enormous undertaking. The huge canvases that require years. So it would make sense that they were commissioned. You know, some of them were, some weren't. It just depended. Yeah. She wants to.
I couldn't resist, and during the break, I Googled Museum of War in Paris. And it is indeed located at Les Invalides. And it's also important to note that that's where Napoleon's tomb is.
That's correct.
And that is, that's something not to be missed. Because they really glorified him after death, and the way he glorified himself during life. And the Museum of the Army takes forever to go through completely. I've been there 2 or 3 times, and I just said, well, I'm only going to spend an hour and a half going through here because there are floors and floors and floors of,
Yeah.
of memorabilia and artifacts.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It is at the Invalid, and it is an incredible museum, very unusual. I suggest that you see. Who else has a question?
The last photo that you showed that you're not on anymore
Okay,
of Joan of Arc,
yeah.
is there a ghost-like figure on the left side?
Good eye, my friend. Very good eye. Yes, there is. That's right. That's right. God is speaking to her, you know. God is speaking to her and telling her to go kill people. Yeah, well, you know, but I could it be Saint Michael? It could be some saint talked to her, and but her story is true. She had a vision. She went to see the king. The king gave her the means to help him. At the time, France was under duress, you know, and she gave spirit to the French army. She actually wore an armor and went to battle. So, and she was burned by the English. Remember that, right?
How do they support themselves? Some of these paintings take 4 to 6 years. Did the government have any kind of,
That's funny. No. How do you think I support myself? I give lectures, I do different things. No, I mean, most artists struggle. It's a very lonely endeavor to be an artist. There is, when you choose to be an artist like I am, it's what you do, and you give your life to certain things. But in order to become an artist, the difference between an amateur artist and an artist is that the artist feels compelled to create. You know, whether you have sales or not, that's just what you do. So it's a lonely endeavor. And when you choose that path of becoming an artist, you give up a lot of things, right? You don't have regular insurance, right? If you don't have a girlfriend, you're homeless. So, you know, like things like that. So I don't know, but most of them, like today, they're going to work somewhere during the day, or, you know. So you don't see the struggle. But part of being an artist is what you don't see, is the ability to buy yourself art supplies, the ability to keep on producing. It's not just creating the art, it's that passion and commitment that you have, that you're going to make it, that you can do all those things. Does that answer your question? So no, there were no subsidy for government unless people were commissioned to do work. But you had to be pretty well known to do just that. Yeah. I want to ask you, as opposed to you asking me a question, I would be curious to know how you felt, not about the lecture, me giving the lecture, but how does it feel to see what you saw? I mean, what did you experience? What did you feel about seeing a lecture on French art? What comes up for you?
And that's one thing I really appreciate about this, is that a lot of the artists that we're seeing, I haven't seen before, and they're lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, no, as I said, most of the art, you have not seen it. You'll never see them again, you know. It is incredible how much treasures there are on earth, isn't it?
So, okay, when I took this class, I took it to have something to do. And I wasn't so impressed with art, but you've made this really special. The things you've shown are truly incredible. And some of the paintings that you remarked on about, look at this dress, or look at these colors, or look at this, it's amazing to me that someone could create that.
Mhm.
Just amazing to see that. So thank you very much.
That's a very touching thing to say. You know, I'm an artist, so of course I love art. I also love history, and I enjoy, this requires enormous research, you know. So I see a lot of terrible artwork, you know, so you should be thankful. But once in a while I see a great piece, and I'm like, oh wow, you know. And I think what gives us excitement is knowledge. Like I like to read a book about something I never knew. I like to see a painting I've never seen. You know, it goes beyond our regular human condition, just knowledge, you know, whatever it is. Don't you like to learn something new, to see something you haven't seen, to see the limitless treasures? Yeah, but thank you. That was very kind of you and well said. Yeah.
Being here and seeing this and hearing all that you're talking about makes me really want to go to San Francisco and go to the many museums there and see this art that I often pass by to go to see what
Yeah.
that I it's like, oh yeah, this is this old European art. It's like,
Mhm.
wow, I've never looked at it like this. And here, looking at the detail of the clothing, it really truly is incredible. And now I'm looking at the coat right in front of me, like, wow, I can't imagine.
No,
I
that's a very
capture
good
this.
point.
And yet these people have done that, and there was no photography that they could go refer to.
That's
or,
a
and all
good-
that.
it's
It's
true.
really incredible.
It is
So
incredible.
thank you very much for.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, it
enlightening
is.
me.
It is, and there are no words, you know. It's moving, and yeah,
One thing this has done for me is remind me of the other trips to museums. I've been to a couple of museums that you've talked about, and I've not been to most of them. But it's a real pleasure to be reminded.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I was in Edinburgh a few months ago, and I saw the art museum in Edinburgh, and it was absolutely incredible. No, Edinburgh, Scotland. Go ahead. Yeah. Is there a painting you guys particularly liked? The Odalisque? Isn't she beautiful? I'll show it to you, it won't take very long. This is the Odalisque by Ingress. It's all at the beginning. We're getting there. She's coming. Ah, you had to pick a painting right at the beginning. It's coming there. This is the Odalisque. I'm telling you, you see a great pictures, but when you see it in person, it's beyond comprehension that a human being did it. You know, simply absolutely beautiful. So, but he takes, I appreciate the compliment you gave me earlier. I thought that was very touching. But the same compliment can go to you, the audience, because you guys came here because you're interested in art and history. I did not speak to an empty room, So you have the same interest and passion that I have, and so I wish to thank you for that. Anybody else has something to say?
We're not over, are we?
No.
Well, we've got 3 more weeks.
Oh, that. Oh, yeah. I'm great. I have 3 more lectures. The next lecture is super exciting. I'm going to show you work of the Impressionist and the dawn of the 20th century. The 5th lecture is a journey into Brittany, where I'm from. So I'll show you Brittany. And the last one is very exciting. I took a journey into the center of France, and you will see incredible castles and villages and things like that, and art from there. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to comment. I will never look at a painting with black the same way.
With black?
Yes. I loved your comment about black. I just never have considered how difficult black was.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if I give you a black tube of paint, right, it would just look like a big black blob, right?
Exactly.
And I'll find her. Did I pass it?
One of the paintings of Women in Black, what I noticed is how much red was in it. I mean, it looks like a black
that was
dress,
Ingress.
but it was highlights of red.
It's Ingress, the painting. I'll get it to you in a second. Whoop. There she is. You see that? Because it's not black, it's different shades of black. This is a sumptuous painting, absolutely incredible. And it's odd to think that when she was painted, she was alive. Do you see what I mean? To think of her as not just the subject matter of a painting, but she was a woman like us. She was alive at that moment. And the painting reflects that.
I've really enjoyed the historical context, but one of the things that stood out to me, especially today, is the expression that's been caught in the subjects' faces.
Yeah.
There was a painting early on, I think the man was a writer or a journalist. And his
yeah.
expression was incredible. And the artist who painted his wife, it's this, that's just amazing to me that he could catch the person's character and feeling.
This is Ingress. I mean, you know, sometimes the world offers us incredible people. You had Einstein, right? You have some people have just incredible ability. That's just the way it is. It goes beyond training. Some people are just simply extraordinary, you know, and not repeated. You wanted to say something?
Hold on, just.
You can't talk without a microphone. It's forbidden.
I was going to ask the woman in black that you showed before, and there was also a group. Are we to assume they are in mourning?
What group, Sudhir?
It was a woman and two children, and the
Oh.
husband on the
Yeah,
opposite side.
They were in mourning. It was the Day of the Dead.
Uh,
It was the Day of the Dead. This one.
no.
No, hold on. I just had it. No, that was before. Yeah, I know.
Right.
This one. This one. Again, this is an example of black. I mean, you know, but a painting like this. So the way you paint in oil painting, there's two, I don't know if I told you that before, there is two type of oil painting. There is la primavera, which means the first time in Italian, like Van Gogh painted. He sits somewhere, boom, boom, and what you get is what you see. And you had classical painting, which is more what I do, where you don't work, see Van Gogh or people like him work the entire painting at the same time, right? Sky, ground, everything is painted. In classical painting, it's much more strategic. You're often gonna work from the background to the foreground, but whatever area you're working on, you're gonna put a first layer of oil. You're gonna paint a first layer, just as a primer, if you will. And then you're gonna wait a week for it to dry, or a few days. And then you're gonna put another coat. You're gonna wait another few days, put another coat. And you can put endless coat or glazing, right? So it takes a lot of strategy. What you first put on the canvas is not what you're gonna get. So you have to have an idea in advance of what you want to create. Does that answer your question? I don't know what your question is. What was your question?
I just asked if they were in mourning because they're wearing black, because myself, I studied the 19th century and novels, and women hated wearing black.
Oh, really?
Yes, they hated it.
Yeah, this is the Day of the Dead in France. Yeah, so she's probably in mourning. She looks like a widow.
Oh.
The one after that, this one?
No. We're thinking of the family. They have the two girls. And you specifically pointed out the girl on the left. It looked almost
Oh,
like a
yeah.
photograph, you said, because she was looking right at us, the viewer.
I don't remember who it was. Wow, good memory. This one? No. I don't remember. Toward the end? Keep going. This
There
one.
it is.
I mean, look up, this is Manet. Look how beautifully painted. You know, and this is a painting of his family. So you'd be hard pressed to think that he got a lot of commission on it. But the look and the children's face and the mother are just priceless.
But I think the original question had to do with could it be that this family was in mourning because the three women were in black?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it was a proper family. I don't think so. But what do I know? I'm just taking a guess as much as you would. Maybe then mourning, but despite the severity of the piece, it looked like a happy family, doesn't it? No? No? Do you think he beats the children, or we can make up whatever? It's beautiful, but I tell you, each character requires months of work. It's incredible. Yeah. Anybody else you'd like to say something?
I'm going to show my ignorance, but with all of these pictures with people in them, I'm assuming that they didn't stand as models for months at a time for the pictures to be painted.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
That's the totality of your question? No, they didn't, or they stayed at various. They stayed at different length of time. You know, some posed for a long time, some. Often the artist would do many sketches, you know. But if they were painting a king, or they may only get to see the king once, you know, and may make it up, right? So it just depended. But I told you earlier that, especially in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, one way that they would paint clothing is they would heavily starch the clothing. So if it was a woman, she would take off her robe and leave the robe standing like that, you know, with a lot of starch, and they would then continue. But it varied, you know. But you're talking about people that were trained, you know, in workshop of other famous artists. All they did is human figure. You know what I mean? So they had a lot of training. No. You look like you want to say something. You had a thought? I had no thought. Okay. And yeah. Anyway, anybody else?
And what you notice sometimes is the proportion of things, the relationship between the head and the body. They don't all, in reality, the size of the head against the woman's body is out of proportion.
So you're saying that the hand of the child is out of proportion?
The mother.
I don't know. It doesn't bother me. But we all have different eyes and see different things. Does it bother you, Jen? Do you feel a disproportionality? Yeah, but you know, as an artist, you take a lot of poetic license. If it helps you that the legs are longer, you're going to make them longer, right? It's poetry. It's not hyperrealism. So, yeah.
I have one quick question we haven't seen, and you probably couldn't see it from, anyway. Long ago, when I went to museums, there'd be a portrait of some person, and the eyes would follow you as you walk by. How do they do that? I mean,
Right.
I don't know how the portrait did it, but how did the painter do it to make the eyes follow you wherever you were?
Yeah, good question. I don't really have an answer for you. It would appear that the eyes are following you. It was
Yeah.
done with such perspective that it would appear in your mind that they're following you, but the eye is not really moving. So
Exactly.
you know, yeah, but
Exactly,
some
yeah.
do. Some are very striking. Some artists have the ability to render an expression. It's easy to draw someone, but to render an expression is incredible. You know.
It's kind of like in the last piece of art where it's Joan of Arc, you can almost smell the moisture and the mulch, and
Yeah.
You can feel the temperature. It's just all so well captured that
No,
I
yeah,
particularly am drawn into the scene where I feel like I'm right there, smelling, seeing, hearing
yeah,
what the
yeah.
artist has captured.
No, yeah, I mean, they,
can
they
you can
captured
even-
some, they're capturing something that cannot be defined.
Yeah,
You
you
know?
can even
Yeah.
feel the texture of the clothing, like the women in those beautiful silks.
Oh, there she is. Did you talk about this one?
No, I was talking about the Joan of Arc, the very last one.
Oh, the
But
very
this
last one.
definitely, I mean, look at the silk of her dress or satin.
Yeah,
whatever it
there's a
is. It's just-
studio masterpiece, you know, just, look at this one, just incredible. But look at Ingres. So this is my favorite painter is Ingres. Look at his painting of a woman. So I don't think in painting like this that he's objectifying woman. I think it's a celebration of the beauty. That's what I think. Look at this. Look at this. Right? So thank you. It's been a great lecture and you've been
Thank you
great.
so much.
Thank you.
And now you may turn on your phones.